Welcome back, everybody. Next episode of the Booyah podcast. Today I got my good friend Paulie Filippone here. Keyboardist, writer, arranger, producer, recording engineer.
Wear a lot of hats.
Yeah. Welcome, man. I'm happy to have you on this episode.
Happy to be here. This is great.
Yeah, dude. Well, we were just talking a little bit outside before we started recording up here about what you've been up to lately, which is a lot. You've been on the road with Ryan Montbleau, mostly, and you guys just got back from Jam Cruise.
Yeah.
So how was that, man? Tell me about Jam Cruise.
It was a blast. It's a blast. It's it's a lot. Like from the second you get on the boat to the second you leave, there's just something happening at all times. There's always like some sort of music or event or yoga class or like, it was a lot going on for sure. But it was a great time. It was like really nice to kind of like see so much music. Generally, you go to a music festival for like 3 days and then you leave. But you're on this boat for a week. So it's a lot, but it's cool. You know what I mean? Like it's really inspiring, honestly.
So I've been dying to go on a Jam Cruise myself, whether it be with a band or just honestly at this point I'll just settle for being an attendant of the festival.
Sure.
So I'm gonna live vicariously through you for a moment here. Walk me through the process of being a musician playing Jam Cruise. Like, where does it all start? Like, it sounds like they give you the gear list to start choosing from, and you start organizing all these sets. Like, kind of bring me in a little bit and bring me into that experience.
Yeah. Well, the goal, I think, across the board is to bring as little as possible on the boat.
Okay.
And there's a backline company that supplies all of your gear for you. So you show up to your sets and there's, all the instruments are kind of supplied if, whatever you request and work out ahead of time, which makes the experience from bouncing around from stage to stage very easy.
Yeah.
Which allows people, you see all these people playing like a bunch of sets every night and kind of running around and having all the backline there makes it a lot easier. I was scheduled to play 2 sets with Ryan Montbleau on the boat, and one was with the band, and one was more of like an acoustic thing. Yep. And then my friend Shira Elias, who was also on the boat, she hit me up and kind of like, she had a solo set, and she kind of was like, hey, come play a few tunes.
Okay.
And so I kind of like split some keyboard duties with AC from Talk. And so there's a lot of, like jumping around, like you cover this song and like you come and do this set and you play these songs. It was pretty wild, so it was definitely a lot of like staying sharp and making sure you know the music. And
so like before you even get on the boat, like is all this stuff kind of planned out, at least like the big sets that you're going to be on, and then you're like arranging all the keyboards that you're going to need for each one ahead of time?
Not really.
Really?
I mean, there's not. I mean, so you get the playlist or something like that. Somebody hits you up and they're like, this is what we want to do. Check out these tunes. You cover these ones. You cover these ones. And then, but you get on the boat and nobody's really rehearsed those things. Ryan's band, we got on the boat and they had a rehearsal space and we were able to rehearse a little bit before our sets. But some of the other sets, you just kind of like throw and go and like rely off of everyone's musicianship and ears.
Right.
And
kind of like Booyah.
Yeah.
We were just saying outside how like Booyah is like, this almost like your boot camp for.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Exactly what just happened on Jam
Seriously.
Cruise.
Yeah, people, you go to the jam room at the end of the night on the boat and everybody's playing with everybody and calling tunes, and all these years of playing all these themes with Booyah, it was really refreshing to get in that situation and not be like, oh shit, I don't know that one, or like what key is this one? It was like, okay, cool, like we actually have a bag of tunes,
Yeah. You must have been like, all right, all those years paid off in this moment.
Yeah, seriously, yeah, it was cool. Yeah. Especially in kind of like those like more tense sit-in situations where you're like, okay, I need to nail this. Can't miss the bridge,
So, dude, actually, I want to hear like a couple of your most memorable experiences. Let's just start with like kind of through the lens of like your most memorable or top like musical experience as a performer on the boat?
Ooh,
Yeah.
honestly, the Ryan Montbleau band set was amazing, and that there's just something about like the energy that night
Yep.
that was really special. We were also immediately after Medeski, Martin, and Porter, like on the stage
Oh, boy.
directly across from us.
Shit, man.
So I think we all were like, you know, checking lines and listening to that band, and like it kind of like definitely inspired all of us.
Right. Got you into a certain headspace.
Yeah, and we hadn't played together as a band in a minute. We had a tour in the fall, so it was kind of, we're meeting back up to do this, and so that felt really special, honestly.
Yeah.
But aside from that, like all the random sit-ins throughout the week, like the jam room was always packed with amazingly talented people ready to play, and
Yep.
so people were sitting in with each other, and it was really cool. So there's definitely a lot of moments there.
Well, I heard about a really cool one that I want to hear a little bit more about. You sitting in with, you played like an hour or 2 hours, 3 hours with Mr. Adam Deitch, my hero, and who else?
Yeah, it was with George Porter as well.
Damn.
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, we had played a handful of songs. There wasn't a key. It was the first night. It was kind of wild, you know. I was still kind of getting used to the flow of things on the boat and kind of absorbing everything going on.
Yeah.
You know. And we went. I was like, oh, let's go check out the jam room, you know. And we showed up, and there wasn't another keyboard player for a while there, so we were just kind of like hanging. And I was nervous. Obviously, like the band was rotating, and it was my first time on the boat. I didn't know like how it worked, and Chad, our tour manager, really kind of like pushed really hard, and ended up on stage, and the band kind of like morphed into this like really heavy rhythm section, and which was so wild, man. You know, like playing Grateful Dead tunes with George Porter.
Really? Oh, is that what I was gonna say? Like, what was the stuff you guys were playing?
Yeah, we played a handful of Grateful Dead tunes, which is awesome.
With Deitch on drums and.
I think he was on a couple of them. There were a few other drummers that rotated through, and honestly, that's the jam room was special like that. You know, like somebody would show up, and then they'd be like, "Oh, let me try one," you know, and then the band would kind of morph into this other thing, and then it was cool. It had like this cool kind of energy that everybody was very like positive and inclusive. It was nice, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I was wondering like who was the guy to kind of like, if you're standing on the edge of the stage, like who's the guy to push you in, you know?
yeah, I mean, you just
Or
kind
did
of like
you just kind of raise your hand and be like, I got
well, you
this?
just kind of like meet people who are on, you know, in between songs. You know, you go up to whoever's playing and you introduce yourself, and you're just like, hey, like that was amazing. You know, like show some love and respect for them as players, because you know there's so many killing players. You want to just be like, oh, like who are you? Like where are you from? What's your deal? You know, like, Of course, I want to play, but I also want to like learn who these talented people are if I don't know them or whatever.
Right,
and so after a few days of that, you know, the collaborations start to kind of unfold.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful thing for sure.
That sounds like a really cool memory for that first night.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, now tell me about like, all right, now let's look through the lens of just as, you know, when you're not on duty, when you're not on stage, you're not in
like a
in
spectator.
a practice room, like a spectator. Tell me like your top memory just as a spectator, musically still though.
Yeah. I would probably say either Corey Wong's band,
Yes, sir.
unbelievable, or Steel Pulse.
Oh, really?
Steel Pulse, man, that was really awesome. And they were touring with their live sound engineer who used to do live sound for Bob Marley way back in the day. So it was the real deal.
Like
you know
doing
what I
all
mean?
that live dub stuff.
Oh yeah, man, it was so great. I sat right behind him, and it was a super loud show, but it was incredible. Actually, Ryan actually sat in with them that night. It was,
Did he really?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
It was kind of awesome. But that, as well as the Corey Wong sets, that band.
That was your
blew me
first
away.
time seeing them, right?
Yeah, never seen him.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew about him for sure, and I mean, Corey does like the Wolfpack stuff, and
Yeah.
he's all over the place, and
But that band is like totally different than Wolfpack. It's like,
it's unbelievable, man. Like the full horn section, everything is so dialed, and like the music is just like so top notch. You know what I mean? Like it's airtight all the way around. It's great.
yep, it really, like I saw them at Saratoga Jazz Fest.
Oh, yeah.
They just blew my mind. Like, just like you said, just like tighter than a gnat's ass. It was just so tight, so seamless, like the way they do each song into the next.
Yeah.
It was just like a whole show back to back without stops.
You can tell they hit the road pretty hard. Like, this shit is so beyond road tested.
Yeah.
You know, I think also we caught them at the end of the tour. It was like the very last thing they were doing. So
right, so they're dialed.
It was so dialed, man. All of us were standing there side stage, like, what is going on right now? This is unreal.
It's funny. I was following some of your Instagram stories from just your whole kind of trip, but especially the ones of the Corey Wong band, because you had a view behind the drummer side stage.
Yeah.
And that guy is just nasty.
Unbelievable. Yeah, left-handed, sets up the kit left-handed too, so it's kind of a trip watching him, you know, because you're kind of used to visually seeing a drummer play right-handed, and he's up there killing it, man. And drums and bass are on the opposite side of the stage, and normally you see them together, so they lock up, and they were just like, it was flawless. Yeah, that was a good vantage point too, to kind of like see the flow of on stage, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because I had seen them in the theater a few nights prior. They played twice.
Okay.
And I was just in the audience for the theater show, which was amazing. But then standing side stage was just like...
Well, you could see, like, Corey is, like, in the middle of the whole band. And he's, like, half the time he's just kind of conducting around the whole band and, like, cueing things. Also, I will say, too, side note, like, after seeing them play live, and their drummer specifically, like, I'm sold on the China cymbal. Getting back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he sets him a China cymbal like 4 or 5 feet up in the air, and he like reaches up for it.
Yeah.
It's good.
I'm sold, dude.
Yeah.
Bring back the China cymbal.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh.
Dude, that's awesome. All right, now, give me your top memory, non-musical. Yeah.
Non-musical.
Non-musical memory.
Well, it's tough to choose. I mean, there was one night we stayed up the entire night seeing music. We went to the jam room, and it was just like, it was an incredible night of music. And when we left the jam room, we kind of walked out onto the side deck, and we were like, oh wow, the sun's coming up. And so we all went to the top deck, and we watched the sun come up over the water, and that was definitely a highlight. It was like a little like moment of peace within this like week of being totally overwhelmed and inspired and, you know, like humbled and all these things. And then, you know, there we were, like, after this amazing night, the sun is just coming up. We're like, holy shit.
It's like the eye of the tornado.
We're in the ocean right now. Like, we're in a boat.
Yeah.
It was cool, you know?
Yeah.
So that was definitely, I'd say that was a highlight.
Yeah, a little moment of clarity amongst all the chaos.
Yeah.
Like, just, you know, it's like what they say when you're in the eye of the tornado. It's like all of a sudden calm and bright and quiet.
Yeah.
And then 2 seconds later, it probably all went back to...
Totally. Yeah, it was just nonstop. But for that moment, it was really peaceful.
Well, I mean, dude, that sounded like just an awesome time. I hope you guys go back every year and hit that. And just become staples in that scene, because it's a heavy scene, and you know, you might see me there too, just as a patron next year.
Hell yeah.
We'll see how the cards pan out.
We all gotta go somehow. It's an experience.
Well, dude, I'm gonna change gears a little bit, because I want people to kind of get to know a little bit more about you too, right? And just like your style, because I mean, you've played, you know, we went to college playing jazz. Before that, you've done hip hop groups. Obviously, we play in a big funk band together, West End Blend, and sometimes we'll play like rock nights with Booyah. So like, you're a pretty diverse and well-rounded musician. But what I want to know is, now that you're playing in like with Ryan's band, like, what's your biggest takeaway playing in that kind of space?
That's a deep question. I think a lot of it comes down to like knowing your purpose a little bit musically. Ryan's band is interesting because we cover so much ground. You know, he has these like really intimate acoustic songs,
Right.
he's really telling a story there, and then there's like more of like this rock and roll edge, and then this funky side as well. And so there's a lot of like blurring the lines within his set, and I think like my biggest takeaway is probably knowing how to like serve the music at any given moment, like not kind of find myself falling into a hole or like a caricature of whatever music I'm dealing with, like really kind of serving the song in that given moment. And it's nice because it's a lot of like the stuff that I work on in the recording studio, in terms of like building and kind of composing songs to like build and structure things, and with keyboards and so it's nice to kind of like get into like my producer brain a little bit
and apply
on stage.
that on stage.
Rather than like, okay, cool, we got to get this rhythm part. With West End Blend, it's like these funky moments where you're like, okay, this rhythm part locks with that rhythm part, and it's like about the groove and everything, which obviously Ryan's music is about that too, but there's also these moments where like it's a little bit beyond that. You're like, okay, cool, like I have to be a little bit more of a composer with this stuff, and especially in like the seated venues where between songs you can hear a pin drop.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's a little bit different than like a
show.
Like a ruckus, like rock and roll, like funk club, everybody standing and dancing, which we have those too, but like those seated shows, it's like, okay, wow, you really have to like be really dialed on like your choices.
And probably like intentional too, right? Like with everything that you're playing, like I feel like it's easy to get into like a habit of just kind of like needing to fill space, or needing
that's
to
what I mean.
exercise,
Totally.
like maybe some like chops that you might have, and like for his music, it's like not about that.
Not about that. You're trying to find like tasty things to like help tell the story vocally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like less like solo driven and all that kind of stuff, and more like what are your parts going to be to like help bring this point across over time. And it's tricky sometimes, especially when you're exhausted and you're on the road, and you're like it's hard to like thread that needle every night of like just addressing some of these really delicate moments on stage perfectly. And it's tough, but it's fun, it's rewarding. So
I can imagine that also being uncomfortable when there's like a really like just dynamic soft moment on stage. The crowd is extremely attentive, and like every note that you play is going to be considered and heard. So, and I feel like, again, circling back too to like all the past things that you've done stylistically, but also now like you're taking on a lot of diverse stuff in the studio. I think that studio kind of training really arms you for those scenarios.
Totally. It's like I can't have one without the other. I think I need to be in the studio sometimes. I need to be playing shows sometimes. Kind of feed off each other. The energy is like important to have in a balance in my life. Creatively, I think it's being in the studio kind of like keeps my head on straight when I'm playing live. Like I learn a lot about like identifying where the ego kind of leaks in to things live, and it's easy to let that like run the show live because you're in front of an audience, the whole deal. You get into a studio and you don't it's just you in there, and so I think it teaches you a lot of restraint to like really
restraint is a great word. It's a great word. Playing in a big funk band too, I think one of my biggest takeaways is the art of playing less, or the art of restraint. You know what I mean? And obviously studying the guys that have done it before us have laid that path first, but it's not until you hear yourself back in a studio setting where you're like, I need to do less. Or you're like, for me, like working with other artists too, you like enter their atmosphere with their original music, and it's what they've come up with, and it's close to them, and so it's this very like precious dynamic. You know what I mean? Baby.
And so you're in the studio, you're kind of like learning what flies in their ecosystem, like learning the choices that they want in the music to treat their thing their way. And that comes with identifying like what my role is entirely. And
very good point.
Going and playing shows after thinking like that for a week or something
sets you up for success.
It just sets me up for like a little bit more of a critical critical ear on like what should happen. You know, where do I fit in this? You know, like everybody's already raging loud. Like it's this huge thing. Like, do I need to add to that? You know what I mean? You kind of like start figuring out the holes within, you know, that musical context.
Totally.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does, man. It does. And, you know, also, you know, I want to tell the people a little bit more about Funkhouse now that we're on the topic of recording. This is your business, you know, when you're off the road and you're not touring. You know, you've got your name on some pretty cool stuff now. What are some of the more, I don't know, things you're proud to say that the Funkhouse kind of brand is on?
Oh man, there's been so many talented people that have come through in the last few years.
Yep.
And you know, I produced some music for the Temptations' last record. They did like a 60th anniversary album, which was a wild experience, kind of piecing all that together. And that was all remote over the pandemic, which was a very strange thing because I'm so used to being in the room with who I'm working with. And it was a lot of like sending files back and forth and then, you know, not really thinking much about it until somebody's like, oh, okay, cool, this is going to be on this record. But
and especially something as big as Temptations, and you're not even in the room with these guys
at
any point.
It was very bizarre, honestly. That was an amazing opportunity. But through working at the other couple studios in town around here, I do a lot of like starting projects over there and finishing them at my spot at Funkhouse, and like just, you know, having access to Ghost Hit and Telefunken and Parkville Sounds and all these places in town. You know, I can kind of like reach out to other bands and like maybe my space might be too small to record a full band, but Telefunken or Ghost Hit, you know, all these places are big enough to kind of start these projects. So I have like this nice kind of alley-oop that I do with my spot in Hartford, and musically it's been really nice to kind of just like do as much as possible.
Yeah, and people really like your, you know, I mean, people really like the style that comes out of Funkhouse too. You know, like you've got your stamp on everything you do. I mean, sometimes you're just hired to not put your stamp on something, right?
Yeah.
And then, but if it's coming through the Funkhouse avenue, and they give you that creative liberty, like you're gonna get a great result. And you know, I always define it as kind of like a little bit more of like the crunchy drum sounds, some of the more throwback, like
I mean the music that we love from like playing Booyah and everything, like a lot of like
all that vinyl
60s,
warmth.
70s, 80s, a lot of those records, you know, like definitely inspired the hell out of me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I like keep them up at the studio, kind of.
Do you keep them up on the wall?
Handful of my favorites. I kind of rotate whatever is like the favorites at the time. I kind of keep around me as like, okay, cool, that's the benchmark.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that happened. You know, like
you know, I noticed that about you too, is that, you know, while we always have this respect for the older albums, you always have this undying like hunger for finding new stuff too, finding new music. Like I've always known you for having probably one of the hippest and like up-to-date Spotify playlists going, like of newly discovered tracks and bands.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a sickness. I just like.
Where does that come from? Like
I don't know, man. I really don't know. I mean, I collect records. I have a lot of vinyl.
Yeah.
And you know, Spotify, it's just like right here all the time.
Yeah.
And especially when I'm on the road, it's kind of like a nice pastime. You know, I'm not like a video game guy or anything like that. So it's a nice pastime to be like, all right, I'm going to make this playlist to enjoy the next like couple weeks, or like send it to a friend, or just like find some things to be inspired by. That's like the major thing for me, is like I'm looking for inspiration all the time. Like I need that, you know what I mean? Like I want to keep that blade sharp, you know what I mean? Yep. So finding
whenever
music,
I'm lacking inspiration, I'll probably hit up your playlists and be like, "See, there we go. There's another banger."
Yeah, it's fun, man. There's so many creative people out there.
Yeah.
And they're approaching things so differently all the time, and the landscape in which we release music and create music is changing so frequently.
Yeah.
That there's never a shortage of like
Never.
something new to sink your teeth into, or like catch you off guard and expand your view as a musician, but also just as a person. You know what I mean? So
Do you have any good examples of that, like right now, that you can think of? I got one that just blew me away the other day.
what you got?
They're called Jaguarma. They are an Australian. You've heard of them?
No.
They're an
I
Australian.
like that name though. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's spelled Jagwarma or something like that.
Wow.
It's an Australian psychedelic, like, indie trance. It's like, it's fucking cool, man.
That's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
everybody's crossing the lines these days, you know, like
Yeah.
nobody is kind of staying in their lanes in like the most beautiful way. So you stumble across these bands, you're like, holy shit, like
And it's been a
this
while.
is so new to my ear. Like I'm
Yeah.
so into this, you know, like it's
I know.
great.
Yeah, it's been a while too. So like it was so refreshing just to be, for me at least. I know for you, you're probably always discovering stuff, and sometimes I just like get too involved in other things, and then something will just smack me like out of left field. The story behind this one was funny. I was in the changing room of a Kohl's. And this
You're like,
track by
Shazam!
Jaguar was on, and I was like, Shazam that shit
Yep.
right now. And then I threw it on the ride home from Kohl's, just like blasting it, like, oh.
Yeah.
It was so cool. And what about, you got anything like that right now?
Oh man, there's so many.
Especially after Jam Cruise, I bet you might have found something too.
Yeah, I mean, just again traveling, just sitting in an airport, I'm like just like scrolling through playlists,
Yep.
finding what's new, what's out there, what I missed in somebody's catalog
Yep.
that I've listened to 1,000 times. You know
True.
what I mean? But lately, I would say the biggest inspiration would be McGee.
Okay.
And McGee is a producer and songwriter out of LA, and again, just like a very unique sound, you know, like this very
Is it spelled
distinct voice.
MCGEE or?
It's spelled MK.GEE.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of strange,
Yeah.
but he produced a record for the singer Dijon, like maybe 2-3 years ago.
Yep.
And I found out about that record, and he had some other singles out, and I've kind of been, I pay attention, and then all of a sudden my buddy from Miami sends me this record, and I'm just like, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
A similar kind of thing where you're just like, this is on repeat. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I just want to
Yep.
like understand what's going on, just kind of like, yeah, it's incredible. So that's one. Unknown Mortal Orchestra is another one.
Okay.
That like
Yeah, you got to send all this stuff. to me after
held
this.
on to me pretty hard. Again, it's just like the production is just like very unique, and I really like that like personal touch on records.
And
you
from
know?
your angle too, like you can appreciate a new approach to production more than some can. You're listening with a different set of ears sometimes, and then like my dad, he grew up working in studios, so like he'll send me a song that like don't even really love stylistically or anything. It's just like the production on it is phenomenal, and he'll just send it to me because of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much music like that I listen to specifically because like one piece of it is so incredible. I'm kind of like willing to deal with,
Right.
like I'm a huge George Duke fan. Like he's my favorite keyboardist of all time.
Yeah.
And like he put out some like kind of smooth jazz stuff in the 90s, and like Herbie did the same thing, put out some like smoother, more
Yep.
electronic stuff. And I still listen to those records. They get kind of like a funny reputation, but I still listen to them all the time because like the changes in one song are really beautiful, or the melody from like the synth trumpet sound is like incredible. It's like I'm still kind of able to kind of see things compartmentalized in a way, like, okay, this song might have some cheesy
Nice
keyboard
chords are
and-
nice chords.
Yeah,
man.
exactly. You know what I mean? Or a nice melody, or
Right.
lyrics too, like
Yep.
that like, it'll always speak for itself in some way, regardless of like the era it was produced in, or how dated it sounds, or whatever. I kind of like that shit,
Yeah,
like,
totally.
give me cheesy ballads, you know what I mean? I like it,
That's why people are like reharming and reimagining some of those songs like from like a really kind of rough era, like some like cheesy 80s area, for example, but like they saw that it was a great song, and then they're like, great, I'm doing Fields of Gold now. Like, you might want to,
yeah,
you know,
totally. Yeah, things kind of like, they definitely go in cycles.
Yeah.
You know, like they kind of go from being in to being dated, and now it comes back,
Cool
and
again.
like all of a sudden, like, you know, the sound of the 90s now are like really in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The 80s and 90s is like kind of this like cassette tapey kind of like
True
world.
that.
And
Yeah, that's actually true.
It's back. You know, it hasn't even felt that long, but like,
Dude, yeah, I
definitely
love
cyclical.
the 90s. I'm definitely a sucker for, like, even like as a drummer, like all those 90s like snare tones.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's
They're
my
like
favorite stuff.
they were like not cool for a long time, and now like everyone's kind of like, yeah, I think we can wet them back in a little bit, you know?
Yeah, the super ringy snare.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, every, you know, production goes in cycles, composition goes in cycles,
Yep.
instrumentation goes in cycles, you know, technology in a weird way even goes in cycles, even though it's constantly changing and getting more complicated and more in depth. It's also kind of cyclical. Like, people are now hunting for tape machines again, and like, you know, making their entire record on cassettes, and like there is, you know, it's kind of interesting to see the branches kind of like come off and reform over.
And circle back.
Yeah, exactly. So that's probably one of the main reasons I like being in the studio. You know, it's just like an endless amount of opportunity these days to create something unique.
Yep.
It's too many tools, and that's the most beautiful way.
Well, I was just thinking too, like, because we do have to get downstairs and play still.
We got
But
a
like,
job.
great example of a band that I think never went out of style is the Talking Heads.
Oh yeah,
Like,
totally.
it's just always cool. No matter, like, it's never not been awesome.
Yeah.
And
Two of them were on the boat, actually.
yeah,
Yeah, they were doing the Remain in Light show with members of Cool 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 on the boat, and it was unreal.
oh, dude, I'm
You
so
know,
excited to play this set tonight with you.
Yeah,
And
it's fun.
before we hop off too, I always like to just kind of open up the floor too, to just see if there's anything else you want to promote or plug or kind of just advertise coming up that you're excited about, whether it be a show or an album that people need to look out for.
There's going to be some shows announced for Ryan coming up soon, so, you know, keep your eyes peeled for that, and some releases, you know, this spring and this summer, and I think we got some West End Blend stuff coming out soon as well. And so
We do have some West End Blend stuff. This might be
It's
the
brewing.
first time it's been
brewing.
officially
Oh,
public.
the cat's out of the
so,
bag.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So, you know, keep your eyes and ears peeled.
All right, let's go. Well, guys, thanks again for tuning in here. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and come out to Booyah every Wednesday at Arch Street Tavern. We'll
Hell
be
yeah.
here. Love you guys.